Session 15. Well, we have finally reached the last session, and I promise to keep this one short. I just wanted to take a moment to put things in perspective and also give you some future food for thought. I encourage you to read chapter 14 in the text on compensation for special groups. However, I'm not going to go into great detail on this topic in this lecture. Now, to this point, we have covered topics that you should certainly understand. You may be called upon to develop, or you may be the recipient of the actions of these topics. I speak of recruiting and selection and pay structures, etc. But the chances of you being called upon to develop and implement executive compensation or special compensation programs upon graduation is highly unlikely. Therefore, understanding is useful, but detailed knowledge is not a priority. That said, I believe that most of you have acquired a great deal of knowledge about the intricacies of recruiting people, selecting people, and keeping people. In broad terms, that's really the purpose of this course. And I dare say you probably know more about these topics than many of your contemporaries vying with you in the job market. This practical knowledge can be nothing but an advantage in that competition. It can be a huge advantage once hired and trying to be successful. So I would like to think that those of you who were honestly seeking knowledge have realized that goal. And putting that knowledge to use in your current organization or in seeking advancement can now become a new goal. So our task this week is to understand special compensation programs for executives and others at a very high level, but primarily to put all of the knowledge we have acquired in perspective. How much knowledge you obtained was and is up to you. Knowledge acquisition is a very individual endeavor. Applying such knowledge is also a very individual endeavor. I hope I have been able to help in both respects. In the future, I invite you to contact me if I may be of assistance, if you need someone to bounce something off of, or if you need advice, or if you need clarification, or whatever. Don't hesitate to email or call. As you probably observed, I have an opinion on just about everything. Oh, if they were only always right. But right or wrong, I can offer and will offer a different perspective. Good luck in all your future endeavors. Well, welcome to session 15, special compensation, and a general wrap-up of the course. Let me first state, once again, you need to read the chapter in the text on compensation for special groups. I'm not going to cover a lot of that material in this lecture, but it's some good material that you might want to be familiar with. We've covered enough material that you should be able to understand the basics of recruiting and selection and also the basics of compensation systems. Of course, you're not experts, which comes with experience, but hopefully you have the necessary knowledge to take the first step towards becoming an expert if you choose. Just so you know, I don't consider myself an expert either. However, both you and I now have the basic knowledge to converse with anyone on the topics of recruiting, selection, and compensation. And perhaps with a little more research, you can actually set up a recruiting plan or develop a compensation plan for a small organization. In addition, I hope we know enough to know what we don't know. We have enough knowledge to understand if we need expert help, and we know enough to converse and guide that help when we receive it. If we have come that far, we've accomplished our goal. Let me give you an example. I'm not a lawyer, and I'm infinitely thankful for that. I know something about the law as it relates to business and particularly human resources. I know enough to understand when trouble may lurk on the horizon, and I know enough to understand when to call for legal help. Lawyers, just like all professions, come in different skill and expertise levels. I know enough to understand when a lawyer is unskilled, incompetent, or unable to fulfill my needs. I have dismissed and replaced lawyers for those very reasons. More importantly, I know how to interview attorneys and find professionals who can contribute to my organization rather than just ones who want to collect a fee. I also have enough knowledge to function day to day without the assistance of an expert. At the Noel Group, I met with our attorneys shortly after I accepted the HR position. I wasn't impressed with their decisions, guidance, and the work they had turned in prior to my arrival. In meeting with them, I was even less impressed. They seemed intent on reciting the law as written and ignoring what our organization really needed. They were intent on telling us repeatedly what we couldn't do rather than guiding us towards what we needed to do. I started interviewing other firms and found one that seemed to understand our needs and my requirements. I dismissed the first firm and contracted with the new firm. It worked great in meeting the challenges we faced. Although I was not and still am not an expert in law, I knew enough to manage our legal affairs. I hope you have acquired that level of knowledge as it relates to selection and compensation. So we have a bevy of basic knowledge that can be applied to the real world. As I've said in previous sessions, that's fine as long as the real world stays unchanged. If so, our basic knowledge is adequate. However, it is unlikely that the world will cooperate in maintaining the status quo. We must keep up with the changes and improve our knowledge base accordingly. It's a little like mine and your doctors. I believe my doctor probably had a pretty good understanding of the body systems and ailments that afflict us when he came out of medical school. But I would like to think that he also understands where the medical profession is going and has kept up with recent changes. Just makes me feel a little better when he's poking around. Before you go poking around in business, and particularly selection and compensation, you should have a good understanding of the trends and their implications. Hence, our current journey and our attention to trends as a wrap-up for our knowledge base. Keep up with the marketplace, regardless of your chosen profession. It is more than a part of your job, it is your ethical responsibility. Understand what you may face in the future and prepare for it today. Following are a few websites with the title of the article that outline predicted trends in compensation, recruiting, and selection. I use only a few references, but understand I could fill this page with articles predicting the future and the trends. Seems everyone has an opinion about what's coming. Here are some of the predictions, and my comments are underlined in the lecture. The website references allow you to read the background information if you find it interesting. Salary and compensation trends for future-thinking companies. Number one, organizations will offer a larger variable pay alternative increase in the amount of 7 to 8%. We talked about that in some of the lectures. Organizations will develop a compensation philosophy and direction in writing that will be reviewed by the board of directors, so it's going to the top of the organization. The philosophy needs to include a method for broad banding. The compensation program should include a responsible measurement system with less emphasis on increasing base pay and more emphasis on distribution gains via bonuses. Goal attainment will be rewarded for individual and organizational goals. Goal achievement will be attached to outcomes and deliverables that are measurable. And cost and importance of benefits in total compensation package will be increased. I'm not sure I fully believe the first two predictions, but the last five are already happening in many organizations and will become even more refined. 5 compensation trends employers should consider. Number 1, market positioning in the labor market is and will be important when the job market opens up and it becomes more competitive. Total reward statements are effective to let employees know what they are receiving or the value proposition we spoke of earlier. Reviewing and ensuring that total rewards packages are properly structured will be more important as the economy recovers. Organizations will refocus on pay for performance, including a review of and revisiting, if necessary, the performance management systems. And organizational culture may need to shift to merit-based pay processes. We talked about each of these trends during our semester, and I believe they are important and becoming even more so. They should receive a lot of attention in coming years. Visier predicts top recruitment, retention, and compensation trends for 2015. Companies will double down on retention and recruiting. Organizations will move their focus from headcount to total workforce costs, and that may include strategies such as the use of contingent workforces and other things. Generational shifts will be increasingly a hot topic. Depth of insight into diversity will become more valued. And from analyzing the past to planning and predicting the future will be the focus. Although made for 2015, I agree with all of these predictions for future years as well. I believe the emphasis on generational shifts, diversity issues, and a focus on future are particularly interesting. Compensation trends for 2016. Merit budgets will remain unchanged through the year. IT compensation is heating up, and companies will start to get very creative in compensation. I believe these predictions are on target, but I'm not sure 2016 is when companies will get creative due to tightening labor market. I think we still have a few years before the market really tightens up. 2016 hiring trends, making room for younger workers despite slower vetting processes. There'll be slower vetting processes in 2016 to hire people. It'll take longer to hire people because the selections will be more careful. Companies will require more with less. There'll be continued downsizing, and employees will be required to do more. And patience is required in this market, particularly for recruiters. This is a short but interesting article. It makes some good points about organizations, particularly in the government sector, cleaning things out. It implies that little change is really expected for 2016. These references give you a flavor of what to expect and what is changing in the future. You will agree with some and disagree with others, but you should be aware of the possibilities. You can then choose which possibilities are important to you and act accordingly. That is vastly different than waiting for things to happen to you and your organization. But don't just focus on trends directly related to the topics at hand. Other areas may provide trends that impact compensation, recruiting, and selection as well. For example, trends in the housing market have directly impacted our ability to retain and recruit employees in recent years. The housing market recently has improved retention dramatically and hindered recruiting. When the housing market collapsed, the recruiting world changed. There was a tremendous inventory of houses on the market and prices dropped to new lows. Selling a home anywhere in America was difficult at best. Prospective employees could not entertain new opportunities outside the local area because they could not sell their current home and often had difficulty buying homes in the new market due to lending restrictions. As the housing market begins to rebound, some of that pressure has subsided, but there's still a lot of areas in the country where prospective employees can't sell a home. Therefore, recruiting is still suppressed to an extent. On the flip side, since it was difficult for employees to move to new companies and new jobs, retention became less of an issue. Retention policies and programs, which are very important, became less so, and pay increases also seemed to lose meaning from an employer perspective. Initially, one would think that the housing market would have little relationship to recruiting, retention, and compensation. But as described above, they are intimately connected. So follow the trends, but don't let the trends rule your judgment. Some published trends won't greatly impact your organization. Some published trends you may disagree with. Some published trends are long-term and will take a lot of time to impact your workplace. Those call for consideration, but not immediate action. Some published trends may be driving change now and may require some adjustments within your organization. Basic knowledge is useful only if we build upon it. I invite you to take this new knowledge and start your building project. I hope I have been of some help in starting you down this path. I've enjoyed your participation, sharing of ideas and experiences, and the effort you have put into this class. Thanks for a great semester.